Hello, this is Faith at Unschooling, or Catholic Unschooling Coach. It's too awkward of a name. I'm going to change that. But anyway, I have decided that for this channel, I'm going to try to put up content on Mondays and Wednesdays. I don't know if I'll always deliver, but that's my intent. And thank you to my 25 subscribers. I'm really here to answer any questions you have, so feel free to comment and to ask questions, and that can be topics I'll use for other videos, any questions you might have. But not last week, we were away last week on vacation, but the week before, I was inspired to think about unschooling math again when I was playing with the 4-year-old that I take care of. And it made me think about it, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how you can unschool math very naturally in the course of the day with children. A lot of people have trouble unschooling math. They really think that's the one thing. You have to sit down and you have to work through things systematically. And I agree, when you get older you do, because it is something that's, it builds on foundation. So you have to understand, how numbers work, and then you develop higher and higher, levels of working with those numbers. But you don't have to do that when they're young. I don't think you have to do it till 7th, 8th grade. And I think it actually makes it a much richer, painless thing. I think a lot of kids get burned out having to fill out all those worksheets, and I think a lot of scope and sequence don't see it as a developmental thing, so they just decide arbitrarily 3rd grade is when you need long division. No 3rd grader ever needs to know long division, and a lot of them can't grasp it, and they won't grasp it till maybe 6th grade or 7th grade, and so they struggle. I think the way we teach math really helps kids develop mental blocks about it. So I think it's actually kind of more efficient to unschool it. Now, I think one problem people have is that they see unschooling as simply ignoring the subject or just not bothering to teach it. And I don't think that's true. I think when you unschool, you're actively strewing your child's path with opportunities to learn. And if your child is happens to be human, they're going to be interested in lots of things in the world. And that includes numbers, because they abound, right? And we use numbers all the time, every day. And your children will see that, and they will interact with them. And they will learn what they need to know eventually. And then when you finally do get to 6th or 7th or 8th grade, or whenever you decide to be formal about it, they can sit down and you'll be absolutely astonished at how much they already have absorbed in an informal way, but in an active way. You're not neglecting the subject, you're just doing it differently, right? You're exposing them in a more natural way. So the 3 things that I found that were vital in unschooling math were reading math literature to the kids, and we live in a time where there are so many picture books. There are so many wonderful children's books that expose children to the ideas in math. So we're really, really lucky. And you can, buy them, but the libraries have tons of them. And I have given so much of my stuff away because my youngest is 19. So I only kept a few, but I still do have some. So this was the thing, and I would aim for trying to read a book a week. And these kinds of books, math-related books, picture books, are things you can reread a lot. So you can read them a few times a week, and then, the same book over and over. Or you can put it back on the shelf, pull it out in a month or 3 months or a year, and reread it again. These are just 2 that happen to be my kids' favorite. How Much is a Million, which is a wonderful book. It's a really fun way to learn about that. And this is fun too. Geez, for Google. My kids were fascinated by this. This is the type of book that you can just open it up and read about one particular topic. And then another day, you open it up and you read about another topic. So it's fun. These are 2 really entertaining books that we read countless times, and my kids got so much out of them, really absorbed a lot. So that's one thing. That was the first thing, is just putting it in front of them. And since I already read aloud to my kids, it was a natural for me to just read these math books out loud. We read so many. I remember my mother, and this was a long time ago because she died in 1999, gave us a beautiful picture book, and I don't know where it is now. And it was the first time I ever heard the word array. It was seashells, and this girl is counting different arrays of seashells, like they'd be 4 across and 3 down, and she would count these seashells. She was collecting seashells. I don't know what the name of that book was. We had it for years, and I think it just fell apart. But I remember 12 Ways to Get to 11 was another one we really liked. I would always do a little fun unit with the kids based on that book, Benjamin Franklin and the Magic Square. I would always read that book to each kid, and then we would sit and do magic squares. We had a really silly beginner reader called Even Steven and Odd Todd, which taught, of course, odd and even. So anyway, and there were more. I mean, we read lots and lots. The whole circumference, and whatever, that whole series of books. I'll link to these books. They were just coming out like midway through my homeschooling life, I think, or maybe not quite midway. But anyway, those were fun too. So anyway, so reading out loud was the first thing. The second thing was just strewing, just providing lots of opportunity to interact with math. One of the first things that I did was have a math station. It was at the end of our kitchen counter. I had a jar of pennies, and we would play with the pennies. And we would just put them in squares and then count how many. We would stack them and see what was more, what was less. Just playing with pennies was just a really basic thing we did. And it was on that counter for years. Different kids of different ages would come, and they would learn to do different things with them. And then we also had some scales. Over the years, we had different types of scales. We had like a little food scale. And then I got one of these scientific scales that had what do you call it? Not our system of weight, but the, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Metric. So they like to switch back and forth. They would go and weigh things all the time. Oh, how much does this apple weigh? Oh, does this apple weigh more than that apple? Or what does it look like in metric? And that would be something they would do casually on and off for years. We also had measuring tapes out there, and they would go and measure things. They would measure their weight. Measuring and money are the 2 ways that you interact with numbers every day. And so that was the little math station. Then I also would strew things around. Like I had a little basket where I would go to Barnes & Noble. We had a Barnes & Noble near us, and then it closed. But I used to go there and buy like a Kumon workbook or some other kind of workbook, a dot to dot or something like that. And just keep them there. And when the kids were in the mood, they would go and work in them. Or I used to also subscribe to Enchanted Learning, that online web place where you can print off stuff for kids, worksheets and stuff. And I would just seasonally, like for Halloween or St. Patrick's Day or whatever, I would print off some fun worksheets, and some would be about phonics or something like that, and some would be about math, and I would just leave them at their breakfast. It was like part of our seasonal celebration. I would just leave them there, and they often would just sit right down and do them just because they were fun and unusual. They weren't confronting a worksheet every single day, and so it was a fun thing to do. And sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they wouldn't be in the mood. Sometimes it wouldn't happen that day, but a few days later they'd see it again, and then they'd do it. That was another way. There's all sorts of things. There's games that you can play. Just all sorts of ways that you can just interact with numbers in a fun way in your home. And then the last thing is just discussing numbers when they come up in your everyday life. And I'm going to talk about that right now. But this is in the context of a 4-year-old. I mean, it's going to be different with a 9-year-old, say, or whatever. But these 2 things actually happened not last week, but the week before. So we went to the library and we got these books out picked by a librarian, so I didn't plan this at all. And this was one of the books that she said, because I said he liked funny books. So, and this is a fairly funny book, Potato Pants by Lori Keller. But at the end of the book, we got to this, the Potato Pants collection, right? And he said, how many pants do they have there on that page? And I said, okay, let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, I know that 9 6s make 54. He thinks I'm magic because I know that. And so we did it. We counted all the way up. And he had fun. And we got up to 54. I said, yep, 6 9s are 54 and 9 6s are 54. And it's always like that. So every time we read this book now, and he really likes it, we read it today. When we got to this page, we had to go through that whole thing. So I think he's probably going to know that 6 9s are 54. And, you know, he's only 4. Like, if you were doing a workbook, it would still be having him count, you know, things. I mean, in a way, unschooling can be much richer. And I started talking to him like that, you know, I don't know, he's 2 or something. I said, you know, you got 5 fingers on one hand, and then you have 5 fingers on this other hand. If you count them up, you have 10 altogether. So 2 5s make 10. And he knows that. Like he'll even ask me questions like, how many, you know, he'll ask me a question. I'll say, well, 5 4s make 20. You can do that with your toes. So you can just be doing that. I mean, I didn't plan that. It just happened to have this page that was excellent for illustrating that principle. And since I had been having this ongoing conversation with him about numbers, we slipped right into it with no planning on my part. And yet it's more than he probably would ever have learned going to kindergarten or whatever. And the other thing is he got this gift. And one day I'll have to tell you the story of how he got this gift because it's really sweet. But in this, it's these blocks, you know, let me get them out, that have like a piece of a puzzle on each side, right? And you put them together. Well, there are 3 over. I can't show you because I don't have that, but there's 3 over, and then there's 3 down. So it was 3 3s. So I said, you know, I know how many blocks there are in this. And again, this was you know, an actual manipulative. So I was playing with them, and we took like what do 2 3s make? And we made 6. You know, he put them together. 3 3s are 9, and then we did subtraction and addition too. Like if I have 9 and I take away 2, how many are left? And then he can count it and say 7. And this was just nothing was planned. It was just us playing with this puzzle and turning it into a little math lesson. And you can do that so easily. And a lesson can only last a few minutes, and yet they know it. And often, when you get them really young, they want to repeat it. Every time I bring this out now, he's going to play that math game. So it's very easy to unschool kids, but it doesn't mean that you're not talking about math, exploring math, discussing math, learning about it, learning how numbers work. You are. You're just not doing it in this pre-digested, very linear, frankly, extremely dull way of learning math. And if you do math that way, you can have a rich foundation so that when they get older and they can really concentrate and they really see the need for math, then they can buckle down and do it, you know, use an old textbook and learn it that way, so that they can say they have that high school credit or whatever. So anyway, so that is my little video, and I'm going to end there. I'm going to put this up for tomorrow morning, and then on Wednesday I'll have something else. And if you find this helpful, or if you have any questions, just drop me a comment and I will try to respond. Thank you. Bye.